Welcome to episode 41 of Posture Labs and Alignment Fundamentals. In this week's episode, we're going to be covering side plank or Vasisthasana. I'll give you a few modifications for this pose as always, especially if it's a lot on your wrists. Let's go ahead and get started. Side plank is pretty self-explanatory. I would recommend getting in from a high plank position. Stack your shoulders over your wrists, heels over your toes. We'll start with side plank on the right. Roll to the outer edge of your right foot, inner edge of your left foot, and reach your left arm up. This is Vasisthasana with staggered feet. Staggered feet is going to give you a little bit more stability if you feel wobbly or if you're newer to the pose. When you're ready, I would really recommend stacking your left foot on top of your right foot, squeezing your legs. As you do this, your left hip likes to roll back. So I want to bring that left hip a little bit forward. You're definitely going to feel your core a lot more when you start to do that. Gazing down at your right hand is going to be a little bit easier. Gazing up is definitely harder. For some different variations, you could extend your top arm, Utthita, with your palm facing down and feel a little bit more length in the left side. Another option would be to come down onto your forearm. And I like the forearm a little bit diagonal. Same idea. This is great if you have any wrist injury or pain. You can still get all the benefits, the strengthening out of the pose, just by dropping down onto your forearm. Now, when you do side plank, it's easy to just focus on the right oblique, and that's the only thing. But I actually want you to really focus on firming down the outer edge of your foot as well and trying to push your hip up, almost creating like a crescent moon shape with your body. That way you're gonna get like an entire body work instead of just this one muscle group working. You're also using your shoulder a lot. Try not to squeeze your shoulder blades together and open your chest. I actually almost want you to feel some space between your shoulder blades. So when I'm in side plank, I will sometimes go around to like my class and imagine them high-fiving their top arm towards me. So when they do that, they're automatically kind of rounding, not really rounding their back, but feeling a little bit more space between their shoulder blades. They're not concaving forward, but they're still feeling expansion in their chest, but that just helps them to roll this top hip a little bit forward and feel more space between their lats, kind of like I mentioned in down dog sometimes. Now we can go ahead and do that on the other side. Maybe I will show you from the side so that you can see a bit of what I mean. So if I'm going to start in a high plank position, I'm going to start with staggered feet. So the right foot's in front. Again, this just provides me a little bit more stability. I want to turn the eye of the elbow forward to what would be the front of the mat if I was on my mat in a traditional way. The eye of the elbow's forward. Then maybe I'm going to stack my right foot on top of my left foot, firm down the outer edge of the left foot and try to lift the hips. Bring your right hip a little bit forward and then almost imagine like high-fiving someone with this top arm. Feel a little bit more space in your upper back and you're bringing that right hip a little bit more forward. I shouldn't be sticking my butt out. I shouldn't be rounding my back. If I'm extending, I want to make sure my arm is reaching bicep by my ear. I'm not reaching forward and down, or I'm not like arching my back and flailing my arm back behind me. So just things like that, things that come with regular practice, but try to make the pose as refined, as organized as possible. You know, you're not just flailing your arm back or flopping your fingers around. Everything is calculated and organized in that fashion. That doesn't mean you can't modify the pose. Of course, drop down to your forearm if you need. Now, one modification we do often in my class, a modified side plank. I love this, not necessarily for your core, because personally, I actually don't feel this a lot in my core, but I like this for other reasons. So a modified side plank, I like to get in kind of from a tabletop position. If you take any of my vinyasa classes, it's almost guaranteed we'll probably do this pose because I like it so much. Let's go ahead and extend the left leg back. Toes tucked, you'll spin your right shin behind you and your left heel down, and then open up. So you're now in a side plank, but my bottom knee is down. So at least for me, I don't really feel a lot of I feel my core, but it's not the same as a plank necessarily because it's not so much in this bottom oblique. I more feel this in the front of my abs because I'm trying to tuck my ribs in, but same idea. Instead of driving down through the outer edge of a foot here, I'm trying to keep my back foot flat like a warrior 2 foot. I'm trying to push my hips a little bit forward. And then, yes, I do love to extend my top arm. The reason I love this pose is because I feel such an awesome stretch here on the side of the body. Again, the eye of the elbow is pointing forward on this right hand. I'm pushing my hips forward, firming my glutes. My top arm's not flopping back and it's not extending forward. It's directly bicep over my ear. And then we can do that on the other side. So I would extend my right leg back from tabletop, spin my left shin behind me, and my right foot flat. So really, my left hand, left knee, and right toes are all on one line. So if I had like lines on my mat, I know some companies make mats with alignment lines, you could make sure everything is lined up. Right toes, left knee, left hand, eye of the left elbow pointing forward. The right arm will extend as I push my hips forward, firm down the outer edge of my right foot. So my right leg is still nice and active. I'm not just soft here. Right leg squeeze, push hips forward, avoid arching the back a lot, pull the ribs in. Now, sometimes in my class, we do kind of turn this into a back bend, usually just for like a moment to get a nice stretch. So I'm not saying you can never do these things like, you know, you could never flail your arms. That's not exactly what I mean. You want to try not to. And certain times we do things in poses that aren't the quote unquote traditional way because they feel nice, because it's a nice stretch or you get a different sensation out of it. So I don't mean to say you can never lean back or never like flail your arm and open up your chest. That's just not traditionally how the pose is done, especially when we're talking about like doing it as a side plank. Now, again, for me, I don't feel this a lot in my core, but it's still a nice modification for those who think side plank is a little bit much. For me, I would rather offer the modification of going down to your forearm. You're still going to work pretty much the same muscles, and it's just less pressure on the wrist, but still challenging on your core. Hopefully you found this helpful. Tune back next week for another kind of fun side plank variation-ish. Hopefully that didn't give too much away. I'll see you back next week.